All right, folks. Hello. Welcome to Credit Banking Mastermind number 24. Can you believe it? 24 of these? I can't believe it. This is awesome. I want to say hello. Thank you. Big shout out to CJ Wallace and the Velocity channel. Thank you for welcoming us to you there on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. We love you. And we'd like to say hello and welcome to all of our attendees and to our webinar. Big shout out to John and Mark. And there's two Marks, Mark Trenton and Mark Vidalis and Natalie, Paul, Raul. We want to say thank you to all of you folks for being here each and every week as we go over the credit banking strategy. So let's just go ahead and jump right on in as I try to figure out how to do everything. All right, so I need to, wait a minute, I'm not even sharing my screen yet. Let's start there. Share screen. All right, there we go. And then start the presentation. Come on now. Come on, let's get going. There we go. Start the presentation. But how about not put you on my screen, but put you on, there we go. Whew, that didn't take long. All right, what are we talking about today? Today, credit banking and the search for the lost American dream. This is Credit Banking Mastermind number 24. Can you believe that?
Beautiful. 24.
24. Let's jump right in. So I need to let you know right off the bat that I'm not a licensed attorney, accountant, financial advisor, broker, or any other licensed individual, blah, 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 blah. The rest of it you all have to read. Basically, you have to do your own due diligence. You need to check that the things we're saying are true. Go out and figure that out, because we're going to share with you a whole bunch of stuff, but you're going to be like, I don't know. Well, it's up to you to speak to the professionals that you work with in your life. Because like I said, I'm not a licensed attorney or accountant or financial advisor. I just play one on TV. All right. Here we are, the Wise Guys and Ties. My name's Joseph Smith. This is my business partner, Mr. Ray Fleming.
Good.
This is our contact information for those who need our help, helping you to provide resources for you to build, start, and grow your dreams, whatever it is for your financial future. Here today, specifically the purpose of what we're doing here is to try to reduce and eliminate our debt. All right, we're going to do that through credit banking, but we have a lot of people ask us, what is credit banking? And I like to reply, credit banking uses lines of credit to free up cash flow to transfer highly expensive amortized loan interest into simpler and less expensive forms of interest. This has the effect of radically decreasing the total number of loan payments, which in turn reduces the total amount of interest paid, which has the result of aggressively paying down the principal loan balance in about 1/3 the time.
That sounds too good to be true.
It is not too good to be true. It is awesome. Why do we do credit banking? Because of the rapid debt reduction and the increase to the monthly cash flow, the increase to the cash availability that it creates. It creates, in the end, a financial independence, right? We're coming up soon on Independence Day. It's just like a month away. I hope they let us off of lockdown so that we can go out and celebrate our freedom. All right. All right, creating financial independence. Let's maximize, if you're into real estate, let's maximize our real estate returns by decreasing the amount that we owe on those assets. And let me tell you, this reduces stress. It melts away stress. Some people say chocolate ice cream does it, or a good massage. Well, credit banking blows both of those out of the water. In fact, you should eat chocolate ice cream while having a massage doing credit banking.
Oh, yeah.
That's really how you should do it. And then you'll just watch all of that stress melt away. And then you become more attractive. That's right, folks. You become way more attractive when there's more money in the bank account. Your spouse is going to love you if they don't already love you already. So why doesn't everyone do this?
I don't know. I don't think enough people know about it.
That's right. They haven't heard of it.
They just don't know.
Because you know where this originates from, this strategy?
From down under, mate.
Yeah, good day, mate. That's Australian, not Austrian. Australian.
Australian.
It's
from Australian for credit or for banking.
Yeah. So, folks, this whole strategy started and originated in Australia. You can look it up, and they've utilized lines of credit as the primary form of their banking tool to eliminate debt and purchase their own homes. It's an amazing strategy when you take the time to look into it. We don't have the time each and every week to spend on the strategy. It takes several hours. When we go around and train on this and talk about it with several folks, we could easily spend 3 or 4 hours just going over all the finer points
Oh yeah,
of
easily.
credit banking. But really, why don't more people do this? Is it comes down to a mindset. Because you see, employees, those are people who have W-2s come tax time, right? Employees, they use their cash as currency, creating a cash scarcity mentality. I've talked about this many times. When you have this poverty conscious, when you look at your money as a pie, and each and every month you watch those different, the money goes out for rent, it goes out for the car payments, credit card bills. Before you know it, there's only this a little bit amount of money left, or some people even run out of money before the end of the month. This is something very, very challenging. So when you work on a cash basis mentality like that, it leads to scarcity, and that leads to hoarding behaviors, or it leads to aggressive, like I got to fight to get what I want, and it leads to resentment, like, well, I don't like that you have more than what I have, and so now I'm envious of you. Or what we need to do with credit banking is it helps us develop, when you implement it, a different type of mentality. You see, wealthy folks use leverage as their currency, and they use cash to accelerate and grow their wealth by creating an abundance mentality. Because when you use your own money to pay off your debts, 100% of that buying power is gone. But when you leverage other people's money, also known as OPM, other people's money, you're able to pay off your debts while at the same time increasing your cash flow through available credit. This has the ability to allow you to pay down your debts very quickly, but still keep access to your liquidity. It's really the crux behind all of this. So what do you need to get started? There are 3 things that you need to get started. Now, we cover this each and every week, but you know what? Right in the last 30 days, last 28 days, we've added 1,000 new people to this channel.
Holy smokes.
Not to this channel. We're on the Velocity channel.
I mean, the Velocity channel's added a couple hundred folks to it.
Over the last 28 days, our channel, Wise Guys and Ties YouTube channel, has added over 1,000 folks.
Hey, yeah. So thanks for liking and sharing and subscribing. We're here. We're dedicated each and every week to giving you what you need.
So a lot of people are like, hey, you've already covered this before. You're going over this. You sound like a broken record. Well,
hey, Antonio says debt.
Yes, that's right. This is something that we need to practice all the time. So if you have debt, all right, you qualify, right? You qualify to go to step 2, right? Step 2, do you have positive monthly cash flow?
Hopefully.
This means you have income that comes in and you have expenses that you pay. Do you have more money coming in than your expenses? If you do, that's positive monthly cash flow. So that is critical, right? And then the last thing is you need a line of credit, right? We can get this done with actually a credit card as well, but you got to be mindful of how the terms on the credit card can change like that. So if you're thinking, well, how do I do? I want to do credit banking. How do I do it? Here's what you need to have. You need to have debt, you need to have cash flow, and you need a line of credit. If you have those 3 things, then you have the ingredients with which to do credit banking. So what is the lost American dream? It's financial freedom. This whole presentation takes on the theme of Indiana Jones, right? And searching for that lost treasure, the lost treasure of financial freedom, right? And so we're looking for it. We're trying to find it. There's all these different booby traps and everything that we have to make sure that we learn, and how to sidestep, and how do we manage through all of this, right? So if we know that financial freedom is the American dream, what keeps us from having financial freedom?
Ooh, The overcoming debt.
Out of control debt. All those natives chasing Indiana Jones. That's like your creditors coming after you, saying, "You owe me money." When you go to work and you get your paycheck, but it's already spent before you've even deposited it.
Right. It feels like you're going to work just for debt.
Right. I mean, if you think about also taxes, you really work. There's that tax freedom day, right? When you work the first half of your year to pay Uncle Sam.
Oh, that's brutal.
So where is that lost American dream? Well, you're going to need a map, which good news is we have the map. We've been looking at it. The map's been broken up into different pieces because we've been so scattered with all the different, we get caught up in going to school, good grades, to get a job, to eventually work 40 hours a week for 40 years of our life, to one day retire on 40% of what we scraped hard living on, scrimping and saving, right? And so throughout this process, we lost sight of the American dream, and all we have is the American nightmare, a never-ending indebtedness. It feels like you want to pass on something to your children. You want to give them something. And what we give our children is our debt, right? We want to pass on more than that. So we've been taking each piece week by week and looking at how to implement credit banking. So we've looked at budget and how to increase and get cash flow, which is really the fuel. And then we looked at lines of credit versus loans to try and pick what vehicle we were going to use on our trip, to get to the financial freedom, to the promised land. And now we're talking about today, specifically the credit banking strategy itself. So what we're going to go over today, and what you see on your screen is, these are just averages, the average two-income American family budget. You've probably seen this in a lot of places. If you're anywhere on YouTube, there's a lot of people out there that have these similar numbers out there, because these numbers were just pulled from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, which got its numbers from the US Census. So, and then of course the averages on the banking products just come from different banking websites. But what you're seeing here and what you see on your screen is the average two-income American family and their budget, with $1,200 going to the monthly mortgage, $600 paying for 2 cars, right? And then you have $600 paying the minimum payments on all of their lines of credit, with $1,200 going towards their lifestyle, which would be, do you get coffee at Starbucks? Do you pay for Netflix? What's your water bill, your power bill, your food bill, right? And then people are putting $1,400 away into some type of long-term savings. So two-income American family has 2 jobs, 2 401k plans that they're contributing maybe up to a max of 10% of their income. And then some people are putting away money into an actual savings account. Now, most Americans don't put money into savings account, or at least not for the long term, right? People put money into a savings account, but then they very quickly go ahead and bring that money right back into the checking account, right? Yeah. Put it in there, and then they pull it right back. So
the put and take account.
The put and take account. So we've gone through this budget many times, and we looked at the breakdown of how everything is. But we have, after you pay your taxes, right? The FICA and the Medicaid, Medicare, $5,000 of your net income comes in, and then when you add up all of your expenses, $5,000 goes out. So people are living pretty much paycheck to paycheck. Now, as we go through this credit banking strategy, I need you to understand that the numbers on the screen here, they're all rounded numbers, right? Nothing really ends in 0 in the real world, but we're doing this to make things easier to look at. But also we need you to know that there's 2 major assumptions that we make when we go through credit banking, is that first of all, your income isn't going to change. And then second of all, that your expenses aren't going to change. And is that realistic? Does our income always stay the same? Do our expenses always stay the same?
I mean, they fluctuate a little bit depending on, I mean, it depends on what type of line of work you're in, but if you're a steady employee, then you're going to have very similar paychecks.
But if this is a two-income American family, what happens when one day there's a baby on the way?
Ooh, yep. Your expenses change. All of a sudden you have or you don't have a baby, but you need new tires.
Mm. Which would you rather have, new tires or a baby? Just kidding.
Well, right now I was looking at my front tires and I'm thinking I'm going to have to actually get some tires here pretty soon. But I wouldn't mind taking another baby, but maybe just not right now.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, so here's what we do. Here's the credit banking strategy. We've got our cash flow. Well, we don't have cash flow. We need to create cash flow right here. So we're going to take $5,000 of our income. Instead of putting it into the checking account, we put it directly into our lines of credit, right? We have $15,000 limit. We're carrying a $12,000 balance, all at 21% interest. And we're going to take all of our income, bypass the checking account, and put it straight into the line of credit. Now that's like step one.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first heard step one, I was like, wait a minute, you lost me. We're going to take all of the income and go put it on the credit card. Wait a minute. How do we pay the mortgage? How do we pay the cars? How do we eat?
Right?
I mean,
yeah.
It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But stick with me, folks. It'll make sense in the end. So when you put $5,000 onto your credit cards and you look in your budget, you look there on the pink little wedge or the salmon colored wedge, right? What you'll notice is that the minimum payment there is $600. But do we need to budget for $600 minimum payment if we're putting $5,000 every out of our paycheck onto the credit card?
Well, no, you don't, because I mean,
no,
you've satisfied that.
So now we don't need to budget for that. It's not in the budget. So where does that money go?
It gets converted into usable credit.
It gets actually in our budget, it gets converted into our cash flow.
That's right.
Which we will use to convert that into available credit.
Yes.
You got a step ahead of me.
I did.
So now we went from zero cash flow to now we have $600 of cash flow, but we're not finished there. So let's take a look here at this savings. Now, when we look at savings and you look at that money that's going into the savings account, well, you're putting money into the savings account. And what is the rate of return on the savings account?
0.00003. I'm not sure. It's not very good.
It's very small, right? The return is very small. But when you put your money into that account, you're putting money into what's called the bank's lending pool. So anytime you need money for a house or you need money for a car, they're going to pull it out of everybody's collective savings accounts and lend it to you. In fact, they're actually going to do something called fractional lending and be able to lend that money out multiple times, right? So when that happens, what you're doing is you're going to put money into the bank, into the savings account, and they're going to lend it back to you at 6% or at 21%. So, I mean, does that make sense to you? I mean, let me put it to you this way. Hey guys, I've got a great investment opportunity. Invest money with me, your money with me. And if you ever need money back, I will lend it back to you at a higher interest rate than what I'm paying you.
That does not sound so beneficial to me.
You invest your money with me and I'm going to give you a guaranteed 1% rate of return. And in exchange, I'm going to lend you money for your car, for your house, for all your credit card, anything that you need.
At 1%?
No. At 21% on your credit card and at 6% on your home and auto loan.
Wow, that sounds amazing. But I mean, we joke about it, but we do that every single day.
Well, what about though? So what you're doing with the bank is you're giving other people your money so they can go out and make money with your money, with you getting very little in exchange for that. And then the other side of it, since the bulk of that $1,400 that goes into long-term savings is being invested into your 401k, which is investing in what?
Different stocks, bonds, mutual funds, gambling on, Wall Street.
Sure. So So the money leaves you get paid money, but it leaves from your paycheck and travels electronically to some broker on Wall Street whose job is to just do as many different trades and exchanges with your money as they can.
Absolutely.
With the goal of hopefully growing your account, right?
Uh-huh.
But we noticed that the stock market's very volatile.
It is.
Sometimes it's up like gangbusters. Other times it like plummets to all-time record lows, right?
I mean, we've seen that,
We've been in a bear and a bull market in just this year.
Right.
We've seen both. So, I mean, but people say, well, over time it goes up. But what I've experienced with a lot of people I talk to, while the overall index of the market does go up, most people don't recover in their own personal portfolios at the same rate that the rest of the market.
Right. Most people are not in indexes. They're in a mutual fund, which is just a business.
Absolutely.
So financial business.
We have a lot of people that are like, wait a minute, you're telling me to not put my money there? Yeah, that's right. Because you're giving your money to somebody in Wall Street who's going to make money today. Right? They're making money on all the fees that they charge you for each of their transactions. They make money off of you today. And I mean, how much money are they making? Do they drive around in little beater cars, or are they driving around in posh, nice,
See, that's
European
the beautiful
cars?
thing. That's the beautiful thing about the business model of mutual funds. You have a financial business model where all you're doing is investing into stocks and bonds and all sorts of different things. But, you have all these fees that help pay for your bonuses. They help pay for your office and everything like that. And, I mean, it's not necessarily beneficial to us as the investors, though.
Correct. And so when we look at this money that's going out there, I look at it this way: people are wanting to put money in, they're hoping that their 401k, when they reach the age of their retirement age, is going to be this wonderful nest egg. In fact, they're enticed to put money in there because their company will match it. Sometimes dollar for dollar, sometimes at 25% of what they put in, or 50%. I mean, there's so many different things. Are you vested or you're not vested? I mean, there's so many different things that people do. So what we tell people, it really depends on where you're at in your investment. If you've been investing in a 401k with your company for like the last 10, 15 years, then what we're going to really try to look at doing is, okay, as you got that money in that account, we're going to talk about different types of ways that you can collateralize that account and make money off of that account through various different business credit or credit banking strategies involved with that. But if you have been in this account for maybe less than 5 years, there's only just a couple of thousand, in that account. It's better to stop contributing. In both cases, it's best to stop contributing and take that money and invest in something that you can control. You don't have control over this. You don't know what you're investing in. Now, some people do, and if they do, more power to them. I don't want them to stop. If you know what you're doing, if you're investing your money, you're educated, you know what you're doing, and go out there, and you know what you're worth or your money's worth, go out and get what you're worth. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that. But most people don't know what they're doing, and they're just putting money into this account, hoping that somebody will go make them money. And what I say to that, Ray, and ask you what you say to this: nobody's going to care more about your money, your future, your retirement than you. What do you have to say to that?
I agree.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
I
agree. So what I say is take that money and invest it in yourself. If you want to invest in the stock market, learn how to do that. Day trade. Take that money and invest it in yourself to learn how to do that. You can make more money with that. If you want to invest in real estate, learn how to do that. If you want to invest into, there's foreign currency exchanges, there's cryptocurrencies, there's all kinds of ways out there and assets that are out there to make money. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're just going to give somebody money so that you make money. That is not a wise option at all, wise plan. You need to be educated on what you're investing in. I mean, for all you know, you could be investing in a foreign country who's planning on on going to war with you. You don't want to. You don't know. What are your mutual funds investing in? You don't know. So again, so what do? We say it's time for you to invest in yourself. Don't invest in those things. So what do we want you to do? We want you to take that money that you were putting into that type of savings, right? And we want you to put it in towards your cash flow. So now, if you look at this, budget that we have here, right? If you take a look here, we had $5,000 coming in, and we had $5,000 going out. We had zero cash flow. But here, we have readjusted this budget without getting an extra job or working overtime, and we didn't have to cut back at all on our food bill, our power bill. We didn't have to cut back. Our lifestyle we left untouched. Now, your numbers that you see on the screen, they might not match yours. You might not have the same house payment. Because everybody's different. This is a 2-income American family, but they have no children. In this example here, you might have a lot of children. You could have all kinds of different expenses. You might have student loans, or there's other types of expenses, or you might not have 2 incomes coming in. You might have less. The principle behind credit banking is going to be the same regardless of what your numbers are. But as you look at your budget, there are ways to increase your income, and there are also ways to decrease your expenses. As we look for those different ways to do that, we create cash flow. So in this example, we easily saw by putting all of our money into the line of credit, we didn't have to budget for the credit card payment. And by no longer contributing to the savings account or the long-term savings in the 401ks, we were able to free up that money and use that now as our cash flow. So now we have the fuel, right? We have lines of credit, which is our vehicle. So now we're going to be able to do credit banking. So how does it work, right? $5,000 in of income, $3,000 of expenses with $2,000 freed up of cash flow. So what you're seeing on your screen is we're looking at the line of credit, but we're looking at it in a different way now. We're looking at it kind of like a bar graph here, where you see the $15,000 limit. That's your credit limit, but you're carrying at this point a $12,000 balance. So what happens when we put all of our income into the line of credit? Well, this is what happens. You immediately decrease your balance. If you have a $12,000 balance, right at the beginning of your billing cycle, and then you put $5,000 payment into that credit line, what happens to the balance?
Well, it drops by 5,000.
Exactly. So now you're at 7,000, but you still have $3,000 of expenses. So what do we do with that? Well, we put those expenses back onto the line of credit. Now, where does that leave us? In 1 month, here we are, this is our first month of doing credit banking. We've now, by running all of our income through our line of credit and putting all of our expenses onto our credit cards, we've been able to decrease our $12,000 credit card balance by $2,000. So in the first month, we now have a $10,000 balance. So the speed, the velocity in which we're paying down our debt is equal to our cash flow.
Nice.
You see that?
I like it.
Anything you do once, you could do twice, right?
Yes.
All right. So you just keep it going. Next month, you do it again, $5,000 income in, $3,000 worth of expenses, wash, rinse, repeat over and over and over again. In 6 months, you have paid off that entire credit card balance. Now, we could talk about, I probably have a slide on this later, but having a $12,000 balance carried on all your credit cards is not something that you typically pay off in 6 months without putting a huge, windfall or having some extra. This is without making any extra payments. This is without getting an extra job. You're not doing overtime, right? You haven't cut back on the beans and rice diet. None of that. We're just changing how we pay for things. We're moving our money through our accounts differently than how we were before. And in doing this, we are paying off our bills by the speed of our cash flow. So we started with a $12,000 balance each month, right? It's going down by $2,000. So by the time, so if you start with a $12,000 balance and you're paying it off at the speed of $2,000 every month, it's going to be paid off in 6 months. Now people will say, well, wait a minute, Joseph, there's 21% interest. You're not factoring in the interest. Yes, we are, but you have to realize that the 21% interest on your credit card is an APR, an annual percentage rate. So you need to take 21% and divide that by 12. And what you get is 1.75, right? So that's how where your balance is at the end of the month. Well, it can be calculated several different ways, an average daily balance, or right, you got to look at the fine print of your credit card. But on average, so what would be your average there? You'd be at $11,000 would be your average daily balance. And then what you would do is you would take $11,000, multiply that by 1.75, because that is your interest rate for that month, right? And then you would add that to the next balance, to the next balance, the next balance.
Beautiful.
And so you go through all of this. You pay down your $12,000 balance in 6 months, and it costs you $735.
That's it. Wow.
I mean, that's at 21% interest. Everybody's got different interest rates, and cards have somehow different terms. You could see that number fluctuate anywhere from maybe 680 to maybe 750 at the most, but right in there.
Versus, I mean, really holding on to this for 8 years. 10 years.
Exactly. So if we were to stop using these credit cards and just continue to make the minimum payments, so you have a $12,000 balance, and if we just said, you know what, we're going to just stop, we're going to freeze that account, and we're not going to use it anymore, we're just going to make the minimum payment of $600, right? If we just make the minimum payments, our credit card would be paid off in somewhere between 2 to 3 years, depending on some of the different fine print of the terms. I calculate it right around 25 months. So somewhere between 2 to 3 years, and that's all it would take to pay off this debt. However, what are the chances that you won't need to use a credit card again within the next 2 to 3 years?
Wow. I mean, if you're not, the chances are, I mean, there's a small chance that you won't use it, but just think of all the interest you're going to be paying.
Well, yeah, you're paying the interest, but I mean, life happens. I mean, people get sent home and they're not allowed to go to work. And then how do you?
We just talked about tires. I know that'd be one of those things that like, oh, I cut up that card, but I will wait 2 weeks to get that card back in the mail so I can buy some tires.
Exactly. So this is why credit is such a challenge, because as you begin to make any progress towards paying down the debt, something happens. Life happens. A major purchase comes up. You need to make it, and so what happens is we go back and we use the credit card. So it goes. It goes back up. In fact, we never end up paying off these debts, and then they overwhelm us because then we can't make the minimum payments anymore, and then we get sent to collections. I mean, it just has this scary cycle where people who don't understand how to use credit are feeling the burn, as this is something that has really hurt them. So if you're ready to move beyond an ignorant way of using credit to being educated and learning how this works as a tool and use this tool appropriately, like we're showing you here on your screen, then credit can be an amazing blessing. It can be this tool that you use to accomplish a lot of good in your life. But there are some rules you have to follow, Ray. All right. So first of all, as you can see, when you've done what we did here in the last example where we paid everything off in 6 months, well, what happens is you become eligible for a credit limit increase.
Yep.
Every 6 to 12 months, you should be calling on all of your cards and asking for a credit limit increase. But also be careful with that, because each time you do that, it does end up putting an inquiry on your credit. So a lot of these different types of credit cards will do it automatically, either on a 6 month or a 12 month cycle. So then you don't even have to ask; they just give it to you, right? If you keep your balance under 50%, your utilization under 50%, and you're using your credit card every month and you're paying it down more every month than what you put back on it, right? You just do this over and over and over again with your credit. You are now engaging in good money making activities that the bank loves, and they want to give you more money so that you'll do it even more so that they'll make more money. That's the theory behind it. But Ray, you have another conspiracy theory on that, right? Why does the bank increase your limits?
Because I just honestly feel like they're setting a bigger trap. That's really what it is. Credit was not designed to be understood. We were taught certain things in life to react certain ways to our finances, and credit is one of those things that we weren't designed to understand. And so when we're given credit, the goal from a bank's perspective is to get you maxed out so your utilization goes up and you can't get additional financing and you're stuck stretching out those payments. So what I feel is when they give you a credit limit increase, when you've been a good steward of this, they're just giving you more rope to see if you hang yourself.
Yes, you and your conspiracy theories. You're probably right, probably true. All right, so the good news is you've paid your credit balance off, but the bad news is you've paid your balance off. Why would that be bad news?
Well, see, the thing is, idle hands is the devil's tool, the playground. So if we do not start using these tools for good, we have a tendency to fall back in our own ways. There'll be something of not good debt temptation that comes along. So we want to start putting our tools to use in hacking down our debt.
Absolutely. But I talked about the rules. There are some rules that you have to follow, right? For this to work, right? If we're going to use credit as a tool, we can use it, number one, for emergencies only. Number two, for debt pay down, and number three, for assets. So you see what happens is your credit card, this is why we call it credit banking or a line of credit. Your line of credit or your credit card becomes your new bank account. It's not only your checking account, but it's also your savings account. That's why it's for emergencies. That's why we have savings accounts and we keep this extra cash on hand because we want it for in case of emergencies, a rainy day fund. So that's the first rule of what we have for our line of credit. So we're going to leave 50% of our line of credit completely open. We don't want to touch it or go into it in case of an emergency. What constitutes an emergency, Ray?
I mean, a child breaking an arm, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, anytime that there's loss of life or limb is potential, or there's a severe loss to a person's ability to produce income, those are emergencies. And so you dip into your emergency fund as needed. Now, the other half of our credit line we're going to use for debt pay down and the purchasing of assets. And what's an asset, Ray? I mean, like, tell us what, like, asset, liability, what's the difference?
So having a liability is something that costs you money to own it. And then an asset is something that makes you money just for owning it, basically.
So, like, you are an asset to me because I own your company. and
because you own me? I'm out of here. Joseph, you don't own me. No, but I mean, you bring up a good point. Yeah, I mean, people, properties, businesses, those are assets if they're producing money. A business could also, in certain ways, be a liability if it is not producing. Same with your home. Your home could be an asset or liability. Your cell phone could be an asset or liability. Just depends on how you're utilizing it.
Yes, correct. All right. Well, now that we understand the rules, let's talk about now how, okay, because now we've zeroed out our lines of credit. We still have a lot of debt that's out there. We've got the home mortgage. We've got auto payments that are out there. Let's go ahead and take a look at how would we tackle this house, this loan? Well, we got this $200,000 out there. What we're going to do with our lines of credit is we're going to take $13,000. Now that's just slightly over 50% utilization. But keep in mind, that by the end of the billing cycle, we'll be under 50% utilization.
All right.
Okay, so we're going to take $13,000 and make a principal-only payment to the mortgage. All right, and then what are we going to do? Well, we're going to put the $5,000 of income in, and then we're going to put the $3,000 of expenses, and that's the first month, and then we're going to go so on, so on, and so on. So if it took us 6 months to pay off $12,000, how many months is it going to take us to pay off 13?
Well, technically 6.5, but we'll put it around 7 months.
Correct.
7 months.
Right, 6.5 months, but at 7 months, we definitely will be completed. Now, also keep in mind during that time, we will pay $752.50 in interest based off of the 21% interest rate that's there. So $13,000 principal only payment. And so what happens when we do that? Well, look at this, folks. If you're into this mortgage, this loan for 5 years, in 5 years, making your $1,200 principal and interest payment every single month for 5 years, that's 60 months. You will have paid $72,000 towards your mortgage. Now, these numbers are rounded. They're not exact, right? The 13,000 has been rounded down and the 59,000 has been rounded up slightly. But here's what it is. You've put over $13,000 towards the principal in 5 years. And in that 5 years, you've paid just under $59,000 of interest. All right. That's 5 years of just being into this loan. Now, look what happened, what we did in 7 months. In 7 months, we paid down the principal in 7 months, $13,000. What it takes you 5 years to do on your own, paying down this mortgage from the start, takes you 5 years to pay down $13,000. We did it in 7 months. Now, during that 5 years, you paid just under $59,000 in interest. But in the 7 months that it took us to do credit banking, you paid $752.50 in interest. So not only is credit banking faster, but do you also see that it's cheaper? It's more inexpensive to do a credit banking strategy. Also, when you put $13,000 as a principal only payment onto a mortgage like that, you're skipping over all of those payments. Somewhere between 4 to 5 years of payments that you're just skipping over.
Oof.
Each of those payments has interest that you don't have to pay. In fact, you saved with the first $13,000 that you put on, you saved $38,866 in interest just in that 7 months that you did that.
That's awesome.
Interest that you would have been paying the bank over a 5 year period of time.
So literally you just made $38,866 by doing this.
Yes, you put that back in your pocket. Now, credit banking, if you're using a credit card with a 21% interest rate and your net income is $5,000 and your total expenses are $3,000, meaning your cash flow is at $2,000, and you're 5 years into a loan, a $200,000 loan, it'll take you another 6.33, so 6 1/3 years, or 6 years and 4 months to pay off the rest of that loan, right? You're 5 years in, there's another 25 years left to that loan. But if you do this credit banking strategy over and over and over again, so once you've paid off the 13,000, go back and put another 13,000 on and do it again, sweep it down, and put on another 13,000 and sweep it down. And when you do that, you will pay off this entire $200,000 mortgage. Well, at the 5 year mark, you're at like 187, somewhere 186,000. So what you're doing is you're eliminating the rest of this loan in 6 years and 4 months. You are going to save $119,319 in total interest in that period of time. So you're saving money and time, right? Imagine you're somebody sitting here and they're thinking today, I've been in my loan for 5 years and I'm thinking about doing a refi.
Nope, don't do it.
And then, or I could implement this credit banking strategy and have this whole thing paid off in less than 7 years.
That's the way
and save myself $119,319 in interest. That's the credit banking strategy of taking chunks, bite size out of the principal of the loan. Because the loan, because of how the interest is front loaded on these loans, right? That means like in your first payment, it's over 83% of your first payment, actually over 83% of your first 5 payments. All of that goes to the bank for interest, while a very small percentage is just going to your principal. What you're doing is and remember we talked about, what was the APR? What was that monthly APR that we're paying on the 21%?
It was about 1.75. Yeah.
1.75%. So it is costing me 1.75% every month to pay this off of my credit card, whereas it would be costing me every month at the start of this loan over 83% of my payment to go. So on payment number 1, $1,200, $1,000 of that off to interest, $200 to the principal, right? So when we convert these into a simple interest APR on our credit card, we are eliminating this debt faster because we are chunking this down, right? So we just skipped over by putting 13,000. We just skipped ahead like four, a little less than 5 years. I forget, it's like 4.6 years or something like that. We just got in our time machine and went back to the future, right? And so we skipped over all of that debt that had to be paid. So
Jeff says that's a 293% return. That's what I'm talking about. Try to get that in the stock market.
Okay, so we have people that have some common objections. They're thinking to themselves, wait a minute, if I eliminate our savings, what do we do in case of emergency? Well, let me take you back to the rules. Remember, rule number 1 is the line of credit is for in case of emergency. And then number 2 for debt pay down, and number 3 assets. So what does that look like? Well, because we would be going through, let's say we're going through a debt pay down strategy, we're doing this every year. It's taking us 6 years and 4 months to pay off this mortgage. Somewhere down the line, here we are, and your son, because he's climbing up on the roof again, falls off and breaks his arm.
It's a while there.
You gotta rush him to the hospital. You've got your insurance; it's paying for everything. You're loving it, and then you get a bill saying, your insurance only paid 80%.
Yeah, that's
$2,000 after all was said and done. You got to pay for it.
It blows my mind how a 30-minute visit could be $10,000, but it's possible.
So, can you put $2,000 medical bill on a credit card?
We can.
Yeah, absolutely, you can. Now, that sets us back a month of cash flow, right? But we just pick up right where we left off and we sweep that down. And so instead of taking 7 months in this cycle to pay off that $13,000, it took us 8.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a big deal because we can utilize our line. Now, if you have something major comes up, notice how we still have the whole other half of our $25,000 line. We're not using. So we are setting aside at least $12,500 for in case of emergency. Now, as we're sweeping it down, if our emergency is something like a $2,000 emergency or less, we can still add that into our pay down plan. But all we're doing is just extending a month. So your line of credit is both your checking and your savings account. We're going to run we're going to put our income in there just like we would a checking account. We're going to pay our expenses from it just like we would our checking account. And all of a sudden, if there's an emergency, we dip into it as we need to, just like we would a savings account.
Mm-hmm.
And that we use the line of, so this is why it's called credit banking. We are banking now with our lines of credit or our credit cards. So how do you know which debts to pay off first?
Ooh, I know the answer to that.
Of course you do. Identify which debts are the most inefficient. Well, how do we do that? Well, should you pay off the biggest amount of money first or the smallest? Or should you do the debt that has the highest interest rate or the lowest?
It depends. We have to look at the debt efficiency.
Well, we use this formula. In fact, we don't even have to look at the interest rates. and the amount of money, the large amount of money that we actually have in debt, that's not really the equation. Our debt efficiency is equal to our loan balance divided by our minimum payment. This is going to give us a ratio. This is going to show us how much of our money is allocated towards paying down a loan. And percentage-wise, we're going to look at to see what is an efficient way to pay down a debt and what is inefficient. So let's take a look. Best to give you an example. Here we have two different loans. Loan number one at $10,000 and loan number two at $10,000. Now, on loan number one, the minimum monthly payment is $100, whereas loan number two, the minimum monthly payment is $1,000. Well, let's go ahead and do our calculation. What do? We take the $10,000, we divide that by 100. We take the $10,000 and we divide it by 1,000. So with loan number one, our efficiency is at 100, and whereas loan number two, our efficiency is 10. Now that number is not a percentage, it's a ratio, okay? So then we have a debt efficiency continuum. Anything, as you see on the continuum, the lower the number, the more inefficient the debt is. So the closer you get to zero, it is time to pay that off, eliminate that debt as quickly as possible. When you reach somewhere around 50, that is where a debt, you could refinance it, depending on the terms of that debt or how long it is. That's where if we could get the efficiency up towards 100 or above 100, that's where we want to be. So a lot of times when we look at a debt with a debt efficiency somewhere around the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, right around in there, that's when we could look at if there's a better interest rate we can get with a lower payment and all that. That is the time when refinancing works in your favor. Most of the time, the bank has you refinance out of efficient debts, making them less efficient, right? So you got to watch that. You got to watch what's going on. Okay, so pay off the number on whatever your lowest number is on the continuum first. Now, sometimes you might look at different debts that you have. See, we have lots of clients, Ray, and we might show somebody, like we're dealing with a married couple, and we'll show somebody that this retail card that they have at an electronics store paying off these computers is their most inefficient debt, and they need to eliminate it now. But then maybe one of the spouse comes in and says, I want that student loan debt gone. When we look at the student loan debt, and it's not as inefficient. However, you got to keep your spouse happy. So sometimes you don't follow what's the lowest on the continuum. You do what is necessary to keep the peace in the house. But I mean, a lot of times, if you can get educated on where your money really is inefficient, the more of these inefficient debts we pay off frees up a lot of cash flow.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
And then you have the power to eliminate those larger debts. See, the reason why we hold on to the debts that are efficient is because we can afford to.
Right.
And then we can get all that extra cash flow we need from the inefficient debts. So we have another objection that comes up. I can't pay my mortgage or my car payment with a credit card. Have you ever heard that?
I have. I heard it right now in the chat.
What? What?
It happens. It's the most common. The most common thought.
I just showed them how they put $13,000 on their credit card for paying their house. So you saying we can't do that?
There's just there's a right way to do it. And remember, it's one of those things like if, we were talking about last Thursday, investing in real estate with your IRA, your 401k. It's not that you can't do it. You just can't do it with them. And so you have to do a little workaround to make it work for you. And so that's all it is. It just takes a little bit of work.
So you mean we have to think outside the bank?
Think outside the bank. Think outside the box.
It's time to think outside the box. Think outside the bank. Okay, so how do you do this? Here's a term that I use. You need to go through a third-party processor. And I had somebody says, well, I looked up third-party processors and it took me to all these different things. That's a term that I use. You need to create a go-between between you and the person that holds your mortgage that you want to pay, because they will not let you directly pay with a credit card. But if you had a third party that could process your credit card and turn that back to you as cash, or if you had a processor that took your payment, turned it into cash, and then wired the funds to your bank, either way, that is what I mean by third-party processor. I say that because I've had a few phone calls this week where people have been confused by the term third-party processor. So that's one of the.
Yeah, Raul, that's what he says. Plastique.
Yeah, there you go. There's plastic right there. Plastique. Plastic. It's just plastic. Okay. It's just a funny way to spell plastic.
Plastique.
All right, plastique is like a
and now
bomb.
I got you saying it.
Right? It's a bomb, like plastique, is explosive. That's not what we're going for. Plastic, like your credit card is made out of what? Plastic.
Plastique.
Okay, so here's the deal, folks. I don't work for plastic. I don't get any kickbacks from them. They're just one of many third-party processors that are out there. But if you were to run your payment through them, they could return the cash to you, or they would actually forward the payment on to your mortgage lender. And then what would they do? They would charge a 2.5% fee. So then we'd have to go back and look at, what we're paying. So on our credit card, we'd be paying, say, 21% interest. But then if you're going to use a third-party processor to do this, then you would have to factor in put in the extra 2.5. So now instead of 21%, you'd be at 23.5%. Now there are a lot of different ways to do this. If you have a business, which is what I recommend, there are third-party processors that we use that charge as little as 1%. I love that, by the way. 1%, right? People have, I've heard people using PayPal. People have used, so another way to do this is people who have established businesses that have been working with their merchant services provider for a long time have very low merchant service rates. And so you can run a payment through there and get your credit turned into cash at a very low interest rate. So that's what I mean by a third-party processor. Then you can take the cash, it could come back to you, and then you pay it, and you can pay it that way. Now, if all else fails, very simple. Instead of putting all of your money onto the credit card, you would leave, in the case of the example here that we were working through, leave $1,200 in your checking account, your actual checking account, and you could then what are you putting on? You're putting $3,800 into your line of credit, and then you're still making your mortgage payment. You could do it that way. Another way that we hear of people doing this is you get a credit card, and you get a credit card attached to your checking account, like your bank offers an account, and then you sign up for a program of overdraft protection through the credit card. Sometimes you can get overdraft protection without the credit card, but when you do it with the credit card, you get a bigger line. Sometimes your overdraft account is only like maybe $1,000, It could be less than that. But when you attach your credit card to your checking account, then you've got the whole limit of your credit card to work with. But here's what I'm talking about. If you have no money in your checking account and you write a check in that check from that checking account for $1,200, what happens when they go to cash it? Well, the bank will cash it. It gets paid to the mortgage lender, and then that balance gets transferred to your credit card.
Right.
But then I'll have somebody say, oh, wait a minute. There is a fee. They charge a fee. It could be as much as $40. And so then I say, well, let's run all your numbers by making your payments at $1,200, $1,240. I mean, you're still coming out ahead paying the fee that goes with that.
We got to remember that mortgage interest and loan interest is front loaded, folks. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest here.
Absolutely. So some food for thought. I don't want to lose the tax deduction for my mortgage interest. Now, I don't hear that much lately because that with the way taxes have been redone, the standard deduction is greater than what the mortgage interest deduction was.
Yep.
So this is a bit of a moot point currently. However, do laws change? Do they ever change taxes?
Oh yeah,
do they
all
ever
the time.
Do they ever repeal?
I think they've changed it 5 times this week.
Well, they have these tax benefits, and then the next president or Congress comes in and they'll repeal it, and then they'll put something else in place. So let's just cover this in case they ever go back to the old way. So you have person number one who makes 60,000, person number two who makes 60,000. Person number one is doing the credit banking strategy, and they paid off their house, so they no longer have a mortgage interest deduction. Person number two is still, making payments on their house and having to make those payments every month. So they've got to then deduct that through their mortgage interest. So they deduct that, but the person number one doesn't. So the taxable income on person number one is 60,000, whereas person number two, they were able to deduct all those payments that they were making on their mortgage. So now they are only taxed at $48,067, right? So the difference is if you're paying at 25, if you're in the 25% tax bracket, person number one pays 15,000, while person number two pays $12,016. A difference of $2,984 in favor of person number two with their tax mortgage interest deduction. However, look at this. The total disposable income of person number one after paying taxes is $45,000, whereas person number two, who's still making all their mortgage payments, but they're deducting it, their disposable income for the year is $38,051, meaning there's now a positive difference of $8,949 in favor of person number one, who eliminated their mortgage and they're not making that mortgage anymore. So yeah, maybe they are paying a little bit more in taxes, but they have more disposable income.
Right.
And then let us not forget how much person number one saved in just their first year when they implemented the credit banking strategy. It was $38,866, right? That's more disposable income than person number two.
Right.
So
that's wild.
I mean, folks, credit banking just flat out works. We've been looking at all the pieces of the puzzle here, right? Let's put it all in order here, right? We first start with budget to get the cash flow, the fuel. Then we look at lines versus loans, and we find that our lines of credit are what really work for us. It's the vehicle that's going to take us. And then we implement the credit banking strategy. We have to learn how to do it. And so when you have the fuel of cash flow and you put it into your vehicle of a line of credit, and then you use the credit banking strategy of taking your income and putting it into your line of credit and then putting your expenses there, it pays off your debt in 1/3 the time. That is credit banking. Now, we're coming up on my most favorite time, which is our case study. But first, we've got to have Ray. He's going to go over a public service announcement. But I want you to stay tuned, because in our case study, we're actually going to cover today someone who actually has negative cash flow. So we're going to talk about that. And we've had some great things to talk about. But you have to watch this case study, because if you're somebody who is in a similar situation with negative cash flow, stick with us on to the other end. Mr. Ray Fleming, if you please.
Alrighty, everybody. Let's talk about where does credit banking fit into the entire situation here. So here we go. To understand how to build wealth in this country, to get out of debt, you got to understand the systems that are taking advantage of you. So there's the tax system, there's the banking system, there's business, and there's real estate. Literally every dollar in the US economy flows through all of these systems multiple times, and literally it's a nonstop process. So credit banking is understanding the banking system, how to really get on the same level of playing the game. You can't necessarily beat the banks at their own game, but you can understand how they work and leverage that to your advantage, so you don't have to be fully taken advantage of. Now, there's some other aspects to this, though. We talk a lot about business. Incorporating a business into your retirement plan, into your wealth creation plan, is crucial for your success, because businesses are the ones that get the tax deductions, not as an employee or as an individual. The businesses are the ones that get the benefits. Now, so let's take a look at Wise Guys and Ties. This is an LLC partnership between Joseph and myself. We wanted a vehicle. Now, instead of us just going out personally and purchasing a vehicle, we have the business purchase the vehicle. So Wise Guys and Ties purchases a truck for $15,000. Now, Wise Guys and Ties gets to deduct $15,000 because that's a business expense. So on the first $15,000 of profit, that is non-taxable. But it doesn't really stop there. Joseph wants to use the truck. So how are we going to do this? He needed a truck, but he also needs a truck for us to operate in our businesses. So now Wise Guys and Ties sets up a lease with our other company, J-Team, and sets up a monthly payment to lease that vehicle. So one business leasing a vehicle from another business. The cost, $200. Now, the J-Team goes out and it'll go and do business and make $40,000 in its efforts in what the J-Team does. Now remember, we have multiple different businesses and they all make money in different ways. So the J-Team goes out and makes $40,000. However, it still needs to pay for that lease of that vehicle. It needs to pay for insurance. It needs to pay for gas. It needs to pay for maintenance, which comes out to $633 a month. Now, in this case, there's two different ways of doing this. You could itemize everything out and take a tax deduction that way, or you could do, if you look over here on the taxes, the US government, the IRS, allows you to deduct 58 cents for every mile that your business, every mile that your vehicle uses for business. Now this truck puts on 20,000 miles a year of business mileage. And in that case, that works out to $11,600 of deductions from the IRS. And so that means $11,600 of income that the J-Team makes is not even going to be taxed. And so let's factor in those monthly expenses too. That gave us $7,600 is what actually was spent on the truck.
For the year? For
the year. But taking the proper deductions, you actually, instead of just taking $7,600, actually get access to $11,600. So ultimately, by doing it this way, you get an extra $4,000 of tax-free money. And so if you divide that by 12, that equates to about $333 a month that the government is basically paying you to drive your vehicle. That's a pretty sweet deal. Now, we're going to take that truck and we're going to move it over to the other side. And I want to talk to you a little bit about how this fits into real estate and the business equation. So on the real estate side, gaining access to rental properties and producing income through the cash flow. So that is $1,500 a month. We could have used the cash flow to pay for the vehicle, right? You know, that's one way of looking at things. If you want a vehicle, you want a car, don't go spend $30,000 on a car. Go buy a rental for $30,000 and use your cash flow to pay for the car. That was one option that we could have done. You know, and then we go out, we have fix and flips that we fix and flip to rehab properties. We sometimes will come across good deals and then, hey, we're a little bit busy right now. We'll just sell that deal off to somebody else. And so on that side, on the real estate side, bringing about $58,000 last year. Now, if you start to combine these different business dealings, and so you take the lease payments and you add that to the real estate earnings, now we're looking at $72,000 of income. But, you know, we could have used the money made from the real estate, the wholesaling, the fix and flips to pay for the truck. But we didn't. We used the business to pay for the truck. And then you start to combine all the incomes of the businesses, then it starts to really produce a significant revenue that could be heavily taxed. However, by doing it strategically, you can start to reduce the taxable income and really bring it down to really as far as you want.
You mean we can keep more of what we make?
Keep more of what you make. That's what it's all about. And so that's what we're here to help you out. So everything that we put on during the week, we talk about business credit, we talk about building your business, we talk about credit banking. On Thursday nights, we're doing the real estate investing masterminds, how to grow your wealth through real estate investing, how to convert your retirement account from the stock market to rental properties. That's what we talk about on Thursdays. And so this is all powered by an education that we also can help you get plugged into, where you will understand how to keep your wealth and also build your wealth. It starts with the essentials, laying the foundation And so there's 10 courses that really dive into deep on that. And this is where a lot of folks start. It's $2,000, but we have payment plans and it's a tax deduction. So really, when you actually do it the right way, it doesn't actually even cost you anything. And then of course, there's the advanced level where people want to find out all about, you know, fix and flips, commercial property, everything you ever needed to know about real estate. And the most you could ever spend with that training is $25,000.
I got started for under $2,000.
Under $2,000. I actually was able to do the whole thing, but I understood the power of leverage, and I never actually even used any of my own money to actually get into this education.
Well, I didn't either.
Yeah.
But I started with just.
And then I started the business, and then that basically paid for all, you know, implementing the credit banking. But I recommend you guys go over to the follow us to freedom.info where you can find out more. We have some good trainings for you on how to access all of this. And and Jay says he needs help building personal credit. Well, guess what, Jay? That's in the essentials. We help you understand how to build and grow your personal credit. And we're also going to show you how to build your wealth at the same time. All right, everybody.
Loving it. Hey, let's do a case. You guys ready for a case study? I'm ready for a case study. Let's do a case study. All right. I love this stuff. This is my favorite time of the week. Okay. So I have to close out of that and see if my mouse will work. All right.
All right. Sharing screen has stopped. All right, everybody. We're moving over here. We're going to.
I'm going to still share my screen, I think. I'm not sharing my screen.
Wait a second. Hold on. Unshare that for a second. There you go. Stop sharing that for a second. Go down to more.
Oh, well, are we going to tell people what we're doing?
Oh. Okay, folks.
Case study time.
All right, everybody. We're moving over to the case study, but there's this new thing that basically is limiting time on certain channels, whatever this, you know, we're not going to get into the details of this situation right now. But if you are on YouTube, this is only for the folks that are watching on YouTube.
So those who are in the mastermind right now,
just stay put. Don't do anything.
Don't do anything.
Okay. So for the folks that are on YouTube, in the description of this video on the Velocity channel, there's a link to the Wise Guys and Ties channel. The case study is actually going to start momentarily live on the Wise Guys and Ties channel. So if you want to see the case study, what you're going to have to do is click the link in the description and go over to the Wise Guys and Ties channel to enjoy the case study that we're going to talk about tonight. And so tonight we're going to be talking about a situation of negative cash flow, and they're in a retirement situation and trying to work out that, and how do we increase that and get some good debt situations paid out.
So we're going to get that started in about 2 minutes. If you're here right now in the mastermind, you're logged into the Wise Guys and Ties online webinar, you're good, you're solid, you're in. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you got to switch over to the Wise Guys and Ties YouTube channel. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you to CJ Wallace for the Velocity channel. For those who aren't joining us, good night, God bless. And for those who want to see this case study, come on over to the Wise Guys and Ties YouTube channel.